What are your thoughts on diversity in films and how is it affecting any story or filmmaking in general?
So I'm gonna just straight up say that I am a type of person who accepts the story I'm given, and so whether or not this comes off as ignorant or offensive, I mean, personally, I don't think it's either ignorant or offensive. But I often don't find myself considering diversity in film, because if I go into a movie, I'm going to see that movie because I want to see that movie, and I'm accepting the story because it's a story I expect to accept. Right now, this sounds very cryptic, but for example, let's say in a given year, Marvel produces 3 movies, and it's Captain America, and it's Thor, and it's Iron Man. And I watch them, and I enjoy them, and then someone goes, hey, where's Black Panther? And I go, oh yeah, that's cool, sure, make a Black Panther movie, I'll enjoy that. So my attitude is, oh, they made a movie for this character, and this character, and this character, I'll watch it, I'll enjoy it. But someone else goes, hold on, Black Panther represents African American culture. It's a representative of for us. It's a voice for us. And how come it's taking so long to do that? I can see where they're coming from. Look, I'm Asian. I'm Chinese, Canadian. I'm personally not offended that there aren't films that have Chinese Canadians in them. If they threw in a Chinese Canadian character, that would be fine. If they don't have one, that would be fine. That's where I'm coming from. I mean, but I'm not ignorant to the idea that people want to see themselves represented in film. I guess I can see that, but on a personal level, the question is, what do I think of it? I think it's good that they're trying to diversify now. Sure, that's great. But on a personal level, whether or not they do that, to me, it makes no difference. As long as the film's entertaining, the story is good, I'm there, right? And I think I'm saying this as a reaction to the movement now where it's like films are trying to throw everything in, and sometimes it feels like it's just being put into a film to meet the quota, and I find that weakens a film, right? Oh, let's throw this type of character in and that type of character in just so we can say we have it. And sometimes it feels like they're reaching, especially when it's a period drama or something where it was clear that wasn't a big issue or that wasn't a great focus. I know the counter argument is, well, just because it wasn't a big focus didn't mean that there were people living during that time that were whatever. Yeah, okay, but I don't know, it wasn't as hot of an issue. You can make it a hot issue if you want. I don't have a problem with that. So, in conclusion, I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not against diversity in film. I think it's great. But if you ask me, like, hey, has it ever bothered you that there hasn't been more representation? It's not something I've ever noticed. And I'm speaking as a Chinese Canadian person who really enjoyed Crazy Rich Asians, and I'm really happy that they did that. But before Crazy Rich Asians, I think there was a 20-year gap. Joy Luck Club was the last time there was a full Asian cast and all that, right?
The 90s or
but it doesn't bother me, right? I don't know if it should. I know some people might say it should bother you, but it doesn't. Like, if the movie's good, I'll watch it. And if a movie naturally the plot doesn't have a certain representation, then that's fine, right? Like, Batman movies are pretty quote unquote whitewashed, and I don't have a problem with that. Right? Iron Fist, there was a big uproar with Iron Fist. Oh, it's a white guy named Danny Rand. Well, yeah, because Danny Rand is a Caucasian person in the comics. So what's the problem? Right? And then people are like, no, but they should have an Asian Iron Fist. Okay, well, if they decided to run with the Asian story arcs, fine, great, right? But they didn't decide to do that, and I wasn't offended by it. Yeah. But no, diversity is good though. At the end of the day, it's cool to see it happening, and as long as they keep writing good stories, I'm there.
When you're talking about representation in films, the British Film Institute made this rule by like next year or so, if any movie, like a certain type of film would not get any funding, would not get its budget if they have feature a villain with a scar. because apparently it's offensive to people with scars that every villain has scars, and it's like people are just taking representation a bit too far sometimes.
I think so.
Getting offended by something like that.
I think so. Well, I mean, then Lion King is like the most offensive film ever made.
Yeah, that and The Dark Knight.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's not turn this into a political interview.
I stick a razor in my mouth and do this to myself. And you know what?
What do you think is the future of filmmaking? How is it going to evolve in terms of how the audience views it and in general?
So in terms of filmmaking, I think traditionally, if you look at film media, it's always been about recording a story that's told visually through actors and through the setting and a script. I don't think that's ever going to change, because if you look at even nowadays, like, you have things that are made specifically for streaming services, you have interactive games that are considered movies, but they all still involve the idea of like recording a sequence, right? So I don't think film itself will change, but what I think you'll find is advancement in film technology, for starters. Like, and we've seen that through our lifetime, whether it's been CGI, whether it's been different camera setups that can withstand deep sea filming, right? High altitude filming. Drones are something that's, no longer new, but drone use for aerial shots and all that. So filmmaking technology probably will advance. Film itself probably won't. Some people consider VR the next step. I don't know if VR is going to replace traditional films, because ultimately, I think as an audience, most people want to enjoy watching a film and not necessarily being part of a film. VR almost goes into gaming territory. And then 3D technology and all of that doesn't really change. I mean, it changes the way a film is visually presented, right? It can change the way a story is visually presented, but it's still film, right? So I think technology will advance, but film itself won't evolve, so to speak.
Like, do you think films like Black Mirror, Bandersnatch will become more used?
I think in terms of home entertainment, something like Bandersnatch, we might get more instances of that, sure. But in a theatrical experience, unless you change the theater itself, where every seat becomes, a seat with a remote that you can choose, I don't see that happening, because how do you get an entire audience to choose, right? And of course, you could argue that, well, maybe you'll do a film where the audience will choose and the majority wins, but it's just not satisfying, right? It's not satisfying if I'm sitting in the theater and I want choice A and everyone chooses choice B. Like, I wouldn't be satisfied as a paying customer, right? So things like that, sure. Home entertainment wise, I can see that happening, but ultimately, if you ask me, I think most people go into a film, even if they plan to analyze the film, they want to sit back and enjoy it. No one really wants to, generally, I don't think people really want to be actively participating in choosing while the film's going on. That's my opinion. Yeah, and I think audience-wise, I think we're getting more and more, I think people are becoming more and more aware of film quality, which is a good thing. Which is interesting, because I think when you go back to older films, for nostalgia's sake, they can be really good. But even now, when I watch films that I used to really, really like for a long time, like the 90s was my time, right? For, growing up and watching films. And even into the early 2000s, I was like, yeah, I don't know, this film's really good. But recently, I rewatched some films that I used to love, and they have a charm, but they're clearly not up to the same quality as a current modern film. And I think that actually has more to do with storytelling than with filmmaking. Storytelling has matured, I think. people have learned how to. Well, ironically, going back to our reality question, people have learned how to mimic reality, so it feels real, even if the overall product is still fantastical.
Do you think over the course of the years, audiences seem to be less and less interested in going to theaters?
No, I think box office numbers show that that's not the case. Well, I think blockbuster film box office numbers show that that's not the case, right? With Avengers Endgame just recently breaking.
It's already like the sixth highest grossing.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case at all. But I do think that between blockbusters, we are seeing big slumps.
Because if you look years back, like in the 80s or the 90s, usually there were different kinds of genres. Like if you look at a certain year, one of the highest grossing films of the year would be maybe a Stephen King adaptation, then maybe a romantic comedy, then maybe a Tom Cruise
genres
film.
are going to come and go, right? Not come and go. Genres are going to get popular and then not be popular, and then be popular again and not be popular, right? Like right now, comedies are kind of out, right? Although the Long Shot, I think, is the new one coming out with Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron. That's supposed to be really good, right? But my point is, right now, superhero movies seem to be in. So I don't know what the next genre will be,